do you get inspired by when conceiving a new film?
Oh God, that's a really good question. I think usually when I come up with a story, it can be a number of things really. It's really, I think ultimately is what the story is about, and for me it's got to be more than just. It's got to be a bit more than just a story. I think it should be a kind of story that hopefully that will make people think a bit about certain things, be it about identity or politics, or I don't have a specific thing, but I think it's really all about, I know it sounds cheesy, but I guess the human condition and kind of how we are all, the kind of horrible things that we do, or it's really, it's got to be something more than just the story itself. It's got to make, I hope it can make, or it makes me think a bit more about just the human condition, I think.
All right. Experience that turned out to be most influential during your career?
For experience, I don't know. I think that there's obviously. I worked 7 years for a film distribution company, and I think that was really educational in terms of. Because you don't learn about it at film school, and film distribution is a whole industry, is a sector of an industry we don't really know about. As when you go to film school as filmmakers, and it really is a massive sector that you can raise finance, that gives you an idea in terms of once you sold a film, the kind of control a distributor has in terms of selling your film. That doesn't necessarily match what you think your film should be. It's very, and I mean, of course it can as well, but I think it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting part of an industry that we don't learn about at film school.
Yes. Why have you come here?
If only she liked you. Make this a lot easier.
凯是我唯一的儿子。He was my only child.
He was my life. He was my...
Looking at your IMDb profile, I noticed your works were all set in London. Is there a special relationship between you and this city?
You asked a very good question there. I mean, I think because I grew up in London, and it's interesting. I mean, I don't think it was a conscious thing. I think a lot of it is practical because you have to raise the funding. When you live in London, a lot of the fundings are in London, so you raise the money, and it's practical, and it's probably cheaper and very easier just to shoot in London, especially a short film. But with lilting, the scheme is all set in London, so it has to be in London. Really. And having said all of that, I think London is big cities are always great, aren't they? I think. It's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about it in that I set all my stories in London. I guess it must be a subconscious thing that because you come from such a big city and such a diverse city, you just instinctively do it without thinking too much about it.
All right. Lilting is the title. What does it mean exactly for you?
It means the word has a lot of different meanings, but it means a rhythm, and so basically, certain languages are lilting, and it also means to move to something rhythmically as well. Okay. And so when it comes to giving the film a title, it's really hard. It was so hard to give a title. Yeah. I mean, so I decided to find a poetic interpretation because the film was always going to have this rhythm, the way it moves between the past and the present, and the way the camera does that seamless thing. And I wanted a pace. I wanted the film to have a pace, and I guess lilting, in some ways, expresses that. in an abstract kind of way.
All right.
Because there was a lot of language, there was languages, there was music.
Yeah.
So there's a lilt to the film, I think, and it was a very conscious decision to have that.
Okay. Good. Like we spoke before, this is your first feature film.
Yeah.
So how did you get to move over? And what the differences did you come across between this and your previous short movies?
The step over was because there was a scheme, and so I applied for it, and you know, we went through all the different stages, and eventually they gave us the green light, and we were able to make it. That's just a practice. So that, oh my god, the difference between a short and a feature. I mean, when I was making the feature, it was so. I've never felt stressed like it. It was so stressful. And I think because of the scheme, because the scheme is such a small budget, the limitation was just immense. Just to shoot it in 17 days. It was so difficult. The whole thing was so difficult. When I was making my short, I did everything pretty much. You know, I was the producer as well, and I did a bit of the running. You know, the first AD. We kept everything very small. When it came to the feature film, even though for a feature film it's a small crew, there was a lot more people you have to deal with. You know, like exec producers. I've never really had to deal with exec producers, and set designers, costume, makeup. It's all very. You have to kind of respect each and every one are artists in themselves and respect their input really. And it was just a bigger team to manage. And then on top of that, it was the limitation of the small budget. That was really difficult.
I agree with you, definitely. Next question. I find your movie very contemporary, but also very Antonioni style, because the protagonists always risk to get lost in translation. Do you reckon this is quite frequent in our society? And then the things didn't really change much over 60s.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting comparison. But I haven't thought about Antonioni actually, but I do think it's very. When you grow up in a big city like London, a big cosmopolitan city, you know, it's very indicative, I think, of my generation, where, you know, when I go out at night for a drink, there's always more than one language being spoken that is beside English. And I think that's very, I grew up with that. I have so many friends beside English friends, and I think it's something I haven't necessarily seen done in a kind of contemporary setting maybe, and there is always that sense of being lost in translation, but in a pleasant way, you know, in a fascinating way, in a way that you feel like you're always learning something. Or so yeah, I get it's an interesting. I think. I mean, I didn't live through the 60s, so I don't know, but I guess.
But watching the, for example, the Alienation trilogy, I found a lot of interesting comparison between your film, because so the protagonists they find a way to understand each other, but they don't speak the same language. They come from two opposite worlds. So that's right. I would like to ask you to
yeah. I think the conscious decision was that it was to talk about that. So even though they don't have a shared language, there's a lot of things that they have in common. The fact that they're both grieving for the same man, the fact that they both love this man, and I think these I don't know how to say it, but these kind of emotions are you don't necessarily have to understand it, but I think it's something we can feel, and it's something we feel all the time. You know, and that's why towards the end I wanted to remove the translator. It was a way to comment on the fact that, you know, on a practical level you might not necessarily understand it, but I think you will feel it.
It's all about the hip-hop on this show, yeah? And I'm talking proper hip-hop, yeah? None of that fast food shit you'd find in the urban section. Nah, man, no R&B on this show. Strictly beats and rhyme from back in time. No singing and no blinging.
How's it going? You alright? Yeah.
Belong to two apparently very different culture. To what extent do you feel this influence your art?
Oh, very much so. I think it's because the fact that I'm an immigrant. I'm kind of like this. I wouldn't say second generation, but this kind of generation where I grew up, where I'm bilingual, and I have, you know, I still have aspects of my mother's culture that's still in me, and the fact that I'm very, you know, you have this pull and tug of being westernized and still having a very strong cultural root. I think it informs how I see my world, you know, and I think that would inevitably translate into my writing at the moment. It seems to be about that. You know, even the next film I'm writing is about that. So yeah, it seems to be at the moment.
I believe that your art may be useful to the gay civil rights, because it's one of the main subject or main character that you use. So just if you want to answer it, no.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I didn't make it. It's a big question, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know. I think, but I think I hope that it can show gay people in an everyday life, you know, rather than within a kind of specific gay context. I think there's been a lot of film that has been made about a specific gay experience, and maybe and you know, and there will still be stories that you can still do about that. But I think equally, I think it would be nice to see gay characters in all aspects of life, you know, and I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't dare to say I didn't make it with that specific to change the world or whatever. Right. But you know, I think if you know, if it has an effect, you know.
It was for naturally, not for nurture.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't make it with this kind of mission in mind, but at the same time, I'm very aware that in terms of kind of, you know, the portrayal of gay characters, and I think I wanted to show gay characters in kind of in everyday life, that we have the same, you know, yeah, without, yeah. I hope I don't want it to be like this kind of flag waving, because I prefer to kind of do it in a more subtle way.
Something about your next project. If you...
Oh, okay. It's a film called Monsoon. That's the kind of working title, and it's all set in Vietnam, present-day Vietnam, and it's about 3 characters who kind of meet. And these 3 characters haven't experienced the Vietnam War, but they are products of the war. So their parents went through it, but they haven't. And it's kind of about, yeah, I think that's what it's about, really. They kind of represent the past, the present, and the future of Vietnam, and how the past just keeps coming back and affecting their present day relationship.
That sounds really interesting. So.
Oh, the orange juice are coming.
Oh.
Okay.